Are we live yet?
We
Are we
are
live yet?
live.
Are we live yet? Are we live yet?
Stop
Are we
it.
live yet? Sorry.
Yes. Jesus.
I was checking in just before we went live to see if there was any activity over in the United States of America.
Oh,
And all seems peaceful.
For the first time.
Yeah.
Have you let out like a giant sigh of relief, Tim? Or...
It's more like a really satisfying defecation.
Poop. Yeah, I was going to say that.
Really good.
I just can't wait till Kamala Harris becomes president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're
when Biden trips and she takes over.
Yeah. How are you guys surviving Brexit, man?
Badly. No mail in, no mail out.
Yeah. I was trying to order a 3D printer actually from Czechoslovakia and from Prusa, and they said that on their website they basically filtered out UK as a place where they would ship to because of Brexit. And I had to contact them and say, well, we're actually in Northern Ireland, which is technically still kind of within the EU for trading. So they said, oh, okay, we're going to have our tech guys look at, see how we can add that back in. Small victories. Because otherwise I'd have to get it sent to someone in Dublin, and I don't know when I'll get to Dublin next.
I mean, have they figured out the border?
That would imply competence.
No, the funny thing is, at the moment, there's certain members of Northern Ireland who are complaining that they can't get food. There's no food on shelves in the stores, and they're kind of calling for, to throw out Article 4, is it not 47? What's it? Basically the one that puts the border in the Irish Sea. But the funny thing is, in all the stores that actually buy product from the Republic of Ireland are well stocked because there's no problem. So all the kind of UK brand stores over here are having trouble stocking their shelves, but all the ones that buy from the Republic of Ireland have tons of stuff. So we don't. Our local store doesn't have a problem.
Yeah, so I'm going to assume we're already talking about Dunn's down the way, which is like a festival of so much food. And then you go into the Tesco around the corner and it's like...
Yeah, we can't get anything.
Where's the cheese?
So, yeah, I mean, I ran into this where I moved my shipping over to Germany with all my other stuff last year. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to I have all these Christmas orders they're still trying to get through. Ooh. And I don't know. I mean, I got to think that the friction is so high for in being kind of a mail order society, especially with all this lockdown, that there's going to be enough blowback that I think they're gonna level it out, because it's I mean, right now, and they're tacking on customs fees to every order. Mm-hmm. It's $4 for every order, or euros. So. Not excited.
Well, I think that's one thing actually I kind of hope to talk about, the kind of business side as well, because you're kind of in the same boat. You're publishing and running the kind of business side. But I think the combination of delays with shipping because of COVID on top of Brexit is just crazy.
I'm just hoping that that even though it's all gone through, I just feel that now that we see what the realities are, that there's enough blowback that's we can just step back.
That would imply that for the first time in literal centuries, a conservative government could admit that they got it wrong. Have you ever seen an English person say that they're wrong? Because that don't happen.
Who can we get on to test that theory?
Certainly not me. I just sound like it. That's I can infiltrate them and learn their ways.
Apparently, Theresa May in her parting speech essentially went, "My deal was better."
That's
before she dropped the mic.
That's it. She did a big crotch chop, suck it, and ran out.
So before, because I always forget to do this because we jump straight into the conversations.
Yeah, sorry.
Tim, we got to introduce you, or ask you to introduce yourself to everybody, and then we'll kind of follow on from there.
Yeah, We haven't been doing this long, so you know.
Yeah. So do I start or?
Yeah, just
and go.
Hey, I'm Tim Fowers. I make games. Been at it for a while. I've been full time since 2015.
Cool. That intro is actually longer than it is on your website. Your about page, which is like what, one sentence? It's like, hi, I'm Tim.
Well, it's the false modesty. I've got to I don't know. It's like it's hard to go too much into like these are artisanal games that the finest crafted experiences, yada yada. Like I kind of just wanted to speak for itself. So.
Yeah, I've learned that doesn't work. But so just to extend that intro a little bit, like what kind of got you into it? You know, so let's peel away the modesty because we're like Michael and I are Irish. We're born with the modesty chip implanted that we can't remove. So we struggle with it as well. So it's kind of fun to get other people to actually say more about themselves.
Right. 2005. What happened with me is I kind of discovered Euro games and kind of independent video game development at the same time. So in my brain, it's all very much the same space. So I'm actively developing 3 video games and 1 board game right now.
Yeah.
You haven't heard of my video games because we haven't figured out how to make money yet, but I'm making them.
Excuse me, I've heard of at least one of them, but with me being the voice on it.
Yes. So I started kind of, me and a friend dove off the cliff and like, we're going to be indie game developers, and we have families and kids and mortgages, but we're going to do it anyway. And there's a long, crazy story that led us through living in Kentucky and then later working at Amazon Game Studios. And then kind of along the way, I started making board games at the same time. But I always kind of saw it as like board games and video games are really 2 sides of the same coin. They just have a couple of core differences. But it's kind of just like I'm always kind of fluid with that medium. And then I finally, once Burgle kind of took us, so I did Paperback. I did Walkstar Paperback, and then Burgle was kind of in 2015. I'm like, oh, this is a thing. Like people are liking this. And so I left California to back to Utah. I've lived in Utah about half my life, and decided to go full time because that's the end game for me. It's like for me, it's more just about runway. Like how long can I do this kind of decision? So I haven't scaled up and gotten a lot of employees. I have some contractors I work with, and I have a couple of design partners. But I really try to keep it really lean because it's just like I just want to be in the game for as long as I can. So. But yeah, Paperback, Burgle Bros are my big 2. Fugitives probably close behind that. Recent ones are Now Boarding, Hardback, Sabotage. So I mean, those are the core 6, and then Burgle Bros is on the boat finally after sitting on the dock for a month.
That's the sequel, Burgle Bros 2.
Yeah, it's a little weird to have a board game sequel, but yeah, and it's actually kind of an expandalone. At the last minute, I'm like, let's just make the tiles the same pattern on the back, so you can just interchange the 2 games. So, yeah, Burgle 2 Casino Capers is out or is on the water, and I flew a couple copies over early. I have a small Patreon, and so I gave them to my patrons, and I gave them to a couple of media people. And also just so I can get ahead of like, what did I miss in the rules? What did I miss? Because I had a big debacle with Sabotage, where it's like, yeah, I do this cool transforming box, except for like 25% of the boxes don't transform correctly. So, but you don't know until it was way too late. So.
Yeah.
I mean, true. Mercifully, there is that good fix, which I have availed of.
Yeah, I mean, and some people are fine with it. Like the fix is fine because you score the insides and it opens up. And other people are like, I wanted this perfect game, and I'm like,
I think so. I'd imagine we're kind of quite similar, as in you're essentially studio lead of it, and you're responsible for delivering the kind of final product. and so you want it to work, and you've done everything you can to make it work, and still you'll get that email from the factory at like the last minute, like just when you're like, I actually thought it was at the port right now, and they tell you, yeah, there's this kind of small little issue with the thing, and you have to go, do I stop the print run, and delay everything to get it fixed, or do I have to compromise? And it's like, it's just like, I've tried and it's so hard, and I mean, we're gonna get blamed.
Yeah, it's really rough. Almost every game has had different levels of that, and it's emotionally it's just brutal because it's this huge investment. You want it to be right, but there are ones that like only you notice. They bug the crap out of you, but like only you notice.
Yeah.
And the other ones where it's like, oh, this is really bad. I mean, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I printed a whole big batch of Burgle. My third print run of Burgle was like I missed a whole token sheet, just straight up.
Whoa. Yeah.
And it's pretty playable without it. Like in the sense that like it's kind of like you're only gonna need that many tokens, but whatever. It was missing a couple tokens. And at first I made a little promo one and I tried to like patch it that way. And in the end we just had to print a whole bunch of ones and just start mailing out the missing ones. And I don't know. You gotta make lemonade in those situations. So
yeah, I think every single one of our games has had some little thing, some noticeable, some not, something that we always notice.
But video games, man, 0-day patch.
Yeah, at least with digital you can do that. But yeah, anything physical is sort of like, let's see, DLC, can we do this? Expansion? Yeah, that's only going to take us about a year and a half to get sorted.
Yeah.
So, Michael, do you want to lead us in like our normal check-in for this session?
Like our normal, hey, what have we been up to? All right, okay, well, hey, what have you been up to? Tim, you played anything? Seen anything? Left the house in the last 6 months?
Yeah, I've been doing I play bagpipes. And so I've been using, and I'm just getting to the point where I'm not horrible. And so I've been using COVID as an excuse to get out because I'm an extrovert. And so I started posting in the different communities here in Utah. I was like, who wants bagpipes? And so on Sundays, and it's a very like religious community here. So it's like, I'll come play hymns for you or whatever. And I'm not charging anything. And so I've played a lot, like over during COVID, because no one's getting that close to a bagpiper anyway.
Well, in fairness, you're blowing a lot of air.
Yeah. And
they're still going in the bag though, so it's fine.
So it's just I've really enjoyed it, and the hit rate for people enjoying it here is pretty high. I've only had like one straight up Karen that was just like, "What are you doing?" And flustered about it. But by and large, it's been great. I go to these somebody will invite me out, I'll play for them, and then all the neighbors will come out and listen, and then I'll leave, and they started talking to each other because they haven't even talked to their neighbor in months. So it's been generally a positive thing. So and then during Christmas I did caroling and went around and did that. So I'm not good, but I'm just forcing myself to do it, and luckily people don't really know what bagpipes are supposed to sound like, so I get some leeway there.
So I've two really interesting facts that I picked up from No Such Thing as a Fish, which if you don't listen to it, it's an amazing podcast on BBC from the creators, from the I guess the quizmasters not quizmasters, people who create the questions for QI.
Okay.
Yeah, the QI elves.
Yeah. It's really funny because to me they're not comedians, but they're just really funny nerds.
Like, inherently.
Yeah. So it's kind of great listening to them talk. But they had a thing about, so the only person who's allowed to wear the royal tartan other than the royal family is the bagpiper. And the bagpiper has to play a song every day. I think he gets like a Saturday or Sunday off, but he has to play for the Queen every morning. And and they have to play a different tune. So her condition is that like she never hears the same piece of music twice. So they were having this kind of brilliant joke about it because they're talking about her staying in touch with like what's going on out in the world, and they were talking about like the bagpiper playing, Mr. Brightside.
Yeah.
It's dropping that good Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B WAP, and it's just.
Oh,
I love this one. There's some whores in this house.
But a different tune. Like, I wonder how varied it has to be for them to get away with it.
Like Queen is old as well. Queen has been around for a long time.
Well, you only got 9 notes. Like,
yeah.
my best is I got Chariots of Fire, Star Wars, and Tetris. Those are my 9. And if anybody has a sheet music for Katamari Damacy, I want to do that one.
I could see you wandering the halls at Gen Con.
Yeah.
Playing the music to Katamari and just having like a bunch of very specific but very happy nerds trailing after you.
No, I think you should put a trolley behind you with your games on it, and if someone buys a game, you keep playing the tune. So it's like when they buy it, based on the price of the game they paid, you set a timer. Yeah. And the game and you'll play that tune as long as
at PAX South they do this. I don't know. Remember if you remember PAX Unplugged last year, they had that band play at the end. So, when the enforcers were coming through at PAX South last year, I got the pipe out and did Amazing Grace as they were pushing everybody out. It was fun. So, I mean, it's dumb, but I figure out ways to have fun with it. So
so good. Ken in the chat is here to help with the score.
Gosh.
Ken is
I can't click
Katamari.
on it.
Ken is our fixer.
We'll send it over to you.
Oh,
pop in the chat in a minute. Yeah, Ken sorts stuff out, so that's all good. Yeah, I remember that band at PAX Unplugged. It was amazing because we just thought it was going to go for like a couple of minutes, and then like half an hour later, we're still all like jamming out to it. Well, like all the punters have left, and like we need to break this stuff down, but also we would kind of like to jam out. So
it was a great vibe.
It was all good. So what else is going on? What else? Have you been playing any games?
I've been doing Board Game Arena and rediscovered Six Nimit, which is super fun.
Game of Champions.
There's a lot of other really like high setup games that just are fantastic on BGA, like the gerrymandering game. It's just like this long setup game, but like playing it is really quick. So I've been, and then like I just learned St. Petersburg. And then, I mean, I still do a few minutes of Overwatch, because you play more than 3 matches of Overwatch, you just get mad. And then I do like 1 round of like Battlegrounds on Hearthstone. And so I kind of do like these little, and then a little bit of Fuser, which is like the mashup game. And so I kind of do that, or I have a routine and I just kind of play a few minutes of these games and then, get back to being a dad or working on games or whatever. So,
I should probably take that approach because I've really fallen out of playing video games, and because I'm just Michael has seen me play. I'm like this, like I'm jerking all over whenever I'm.
And that's when he's like playing Slay the Spire or something like that. It's just like no, it's not.
Okay, I do have 350 hours into Slay the Spire, but I don't know. Ascension 20. I'm at 20 with everybody now, and I've lost motivation because it's like. Doing that last Ascension is
it's rough. A20 is rough on all of them. I've got to say I've done A20 with all 3 of the original characters, but I cannot get my brain into gear with the 4th one, with the newer one, the Watcher, and it ain't a disappointment because I have put a lot of time into that game. And I've had a lot of enjoyment from it. But yeah, it is very satisfying to get that final Ascension tick done.
It's one of those things where like I made Paperback after playing 3,000 games of Dominion Isotropic, So now I'm making Paperback Adventures is in development, and it is like Slay the Spire meets Paperback kind of thing. So, but we're just doing solo game is kind of risky, but and we're definitely taking some different turns with it, because like there's a lot of bookkeeping. It's just like, how do you do weakness and how do you do vulnerable, and all these debuffs and whatnot. There are a lot of really mathy. We came up with a system where we have like, I can put red cubes on you, and based on what I am, that's going to mean something for you, and you're going to put red cubes on me, and based on what you are, that means something to me. So it can vary with each character and with each enemy. Instead of having like, now subtract and round, this much damage.
So that's kind of part of what I wanted to jump into in the conversation tonight. Is it so maybe do I pause it, Michael? Have you played any games that we need to report on?
I finished The Crew today.
I saw that in the chat.
Say, and Ken finished The Crew today, and I am now glad, because I will never have to play The Crew ever again in my life. It is done, and I'm not saying that. I was trying to explain to the folks earlier today, it's not that it is a bad game. It is in fact a very good game. It is a well-designed game. It is an interesting game, but it is a game where I cannot get over being incredibly worried about disappointing everybody because I make mistakes. Because I'm not a great trick-taking game player, and if I make a mistake, that's it. You're screwed. You have to restart again, and you have to restart again.
That's the secret downside of Hanabi, is that you really feel the impact of letting the group down, and it's not positive. Side rant. I believe that like co-op is about vulnerability and sacrifice. That somebody needs help, and that somebody else can sacrifice a resource or something to another person, and it's a signal you're important to the group and you're important to me, and it keeps it very positive. Whereas like, it does feel good when you're all relying on each other, but if you falter, there's no kind of forgiveness in that style of game.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's my issue with it. Like I said, I can see so much good in it, and I can see why it is so widely regarded as a good game and so wildly popular since its release. But it puts too much emotional drain on me, I guess, which is very strange considering it's like this tiny box with 60 cards or whatever in it, and pretty much that's it. We have people coming up to us after like, I played Holding On, and it was such a emotionally hard game. I said, do you want to try The Crew? It will mess you up, buddy. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, what about you, Rory? Done anything? Played anything since we last spoke?
Well, I think I was starting to play, or I set up and played Test of Honor. Solo, still testing my kind of it's kind of some of what you're talking about, Tim. Just trying to figure out how to make an AI work in a miniatures game, and keep it really simple so it doesn't give you a massive headache of trying to work it out. Yeah, and I'm really happy with the degree of what I have. It's just trying to figure out how I streamline it. But just playing the game over the last 2 nights has just given me wonderful moments that I just haven't been getting in other games recently, just cinematic moments. And I was trying to explain to a friend that I take a photo of something that's happening, but in my head that's moving. So it's like you can't see what's going on in my head, but that picture where that character's on that box, they're leaping through the air and they're swinging at the other person and they're falling backwards because the kind of surprises of the dice rolls and the simplicity of the rules allow that story to come out, because I'm not thinking about the rules. I'm really engaged in the actual experience.
Yeah, there's in my games, Burgle is the one that does that, but I've never really figured out why. I have some theories, but in Burgle, people always personify the guard. The guard is this really faceless force moving around, and people will start to tell the kind of from his perspective, because they want to outwit this guard, and so they're imagining him looking shocked at a hole in the wall, or imagining him, and they're constantly the foil for this card,
Mhm.
and they're starting to come up with him being this having these reactions, and Burgle is very systemic. It's not narrative really at all, but it produces a sequence of events that people, weave a narrative to. So I don't know. It's fascinating what you inject.
But I think we had a conversation about this before in a previous session, but I think that's what actually works best. I think when a game gives you the bare bones of a narrative and lets you inject into it, like I'm kind of tired of the games that try to give me this epic story, because they just can't replicate what I'll have in my head.
What is a game lets you tell a story to yourself?
Yeah.
Ken actually puts it, Burgle Bros recreates a movie, and you need silly parts. You need those close-ups on the guard's face, and you need the moment between the wire being tripped and the alarm going off, that kind of thing. You need the tensions, and I agree.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely got that cinematic vibe.
I think it might be that thing of it. You're possibly handing tropes to the players that they've seen elsewhere, and so they get to your brain is making those connections from that movie they've seen or that cartoon, and I can't help but trigger that connection, because that's essentially I'm playing a Kurosawa movie. It's like when they're running through the streets and everyone's ducking in, off out of the way, and it's kicking up dust. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a Kurosawa movie as I'm playing, because my brain is making connections between.
Well, in a world where you want a game to produce emotions, giving people the framework of a movie, and letting them be like, it's like this movie. Like we do that with Fugitive and with Burgle, where it's like, and it doesn't work for everything, but if it gives people a lattice work to be like, I'm kind of expecting these moments to happen. And then figuring out, like, the trick is like really when the mechanics can get the player to a point, like in Burgle, the core emotion is cleverness. Like you feel you're outwitting this guard. And yours, in your game, it's probably some kind of a heroic, battle cry, or some dramatic, showdown.
And I think, like, I know it's not one of your games. It's by Jeff, but it's published under.
We're
so Getaway Driver, like that, I picked that up, and I love the cat and mouse feel of that game.
Are you trying to close the net and squeak out? And
again, it's like, to me it's a bit like the way Adventure Mart works as a game. This, you've seen it before somewhere, so you kind of intuitively know how to play the game, and because the rules don't get in the way, you get to enjoy that experience because it's connecting those things together.
So giving them, I mean, what Jeff did with like the like, it's like drive on two wheels and drive on the sidewalk, and like literally he was giving like these action moments mechanical meaning in the game. So I mean, I don't always want to lean on movies, but like and and also part of a movie is like, part of it is this projection where you're like, what would I do in that situation? And Fog of Love with the romantic comedy, but there's just a little part of our brain that I think I'd do okay at that. You're kind of self-evaluating a little bit in some movies. And so that's where you get a game lets you test that, or lets you put on the map for a little while and actually make some decisions. So.
Yeah, totally agree.
That's right. Burgle Brothers getting a lot of love in the chat, by the way. Burgle Brothers was my Grail game for a few years before I met Barb, and she introduced me to Tim, and I got to work at Essen for it.
Oh, I've had some awesome volunteers, especially ones that speak German at Essen.
Meanwhile, Ken has been pushing people to make a standing laser cut building for Burgle Brothers as well. I remember trying to, in a previous past life, trying to organize the shipping for those things.
Yeah, we tried to make towers, and they weren't even that good. And then like over at Daft Concepts, he just shows up at a convention. He didn't know I was going to be there. And he had this, like, he had thought through so many elements of how to make a tower better in like 15 different ways. And so then I just started selling his stuff. I'm just like, you know, so the whole like secondary market, like I hear there's a crackdown on Etsy right now.
From one company.
Yeah, should not be named. But like me, like I literally list them on my site. Like, you want an organizer? Go to this site. You want this? Go to this site. Like, I'm not going to make those. I don't see how that cannibalizes anything. So,
yeah, I think that's a pretty cool approach to take.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, raise the sea, raises all ships, or something like that.
Yeah. All right, so let's have a look at some of Tim's delightful, wonderful games. I'm just going to put him up here on the screen, and then obviously cover his face. So let's get rid of that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tim, you've been around for long time.
I get. I mean, I was kind of earlier. I mean, for Walkstar, I should have taken to Kickstarter, but I got a little gun shy, and I ended up going into publisher hell for 3 years. But that really crystallized my business model to never really work with publishers. Like, just they're never gonna love your game like you love your game. So yeah, we got a lot. I do my own German editions, but I partner with Two Tomatoes for French and Spanish. I don't know. I mean, mostly it's just like I'm trying to. I don't really do sci-fi and I don't really do fantasy. And I really like contemporary things in general, just because I think there's a lot of fun there. And it actually started, the world, kind of the Burgle Bros universe started with, we were making this airline video game called Nowboarding, nowboarding.us if you want to check it out. And we wanted an art style, and I talked to a friend of mine, and Ryan, and we watched the intro made by Saul Bass to Catch Me If You Can. And we just tried to copy everything from that. We're like, what font are they using? What palette are they using? And it's great to just pick one thing that's very evocative of an era and just dig into it. And then he was able to kind of hybridize our style from like Hanna-Barbera and you know Disney and just a lot of this period stuff into what's kind of become my style. And then we've really just built it out, kind of like, you know, just just keep filling in different parts of that. I mean, a fun story about, so Paperback kind of came from a previous game I'd made called Clockwords, which was a video game, and then I figured out how to make it a deck builder, and then so it kind of had a journey through a video game, and then I made a Paperback, and then I made it into an app. So, you know, you go back and forth. And Paperback was actually really pushed by, I met Seth Jaffe of Tasty Minstrel at a convention, and we just had one of those like hang out and talk things, and we were just dumping all of our old ideas. And I pulled this Paperback one out, and he's like, "Why don't you make that one?" And I'm like, and he helped me through there's been a lot of times where a conversation with another designer will help me over some kind of local maxima that I'm stuck in. With that one, I'm like, well, I can't get all the letter and power combinations. I'd have to have too many cards and whatever. And he's like, well, you'll have enough cards that it won't matter. I'm like, you know, and like Ryan Lockett helped with a key piece of Nowboarding and with Burgle Bros 2. Where a lot of these times where you kind of have this assumption about something, you and then one of your, you know, somebody questions that assumption. It's like, well, what if you let them cheat? What if that's the game? I'm like, so
it's when you go to defend yourself and then go, oh no, actually you're right. Yeah.
And then Burgle came out of, like, I was doing this hybrid app board game thing, and it was horrible and it didn't work. But I was at Gen Con, and I would go pitch it to people. I'm like, hey, do you want to play Ocean's 11, the board game? And they're like, yes. And then come and just, you know, be miserable through my horrible game. But the light in their eyes when they lit up and they're like, I want to play that game. I had to make that game afterward. I'm like, I felt so bad. I'm like, okay, we're gonna make this. And then you know, there's definitely some Forbidden Island stuff and some other pieces came together. But a lot of these games were actually kind of in I mean, there was a side gig, but I had a lot of like I call them 2-week games because it's like they really got to 80 to 90% of their final form in like a 2-week sprint. I call it the honeymoon, where like you're really in love with an idea and you use all that energy to just iterate really quickly while you still have energy. And then once you start to be like, it's getting harder to make these prototypes, or I'm not really sure. That's usually when the people that are playtesting it will kind of give you energy, where they're kind of like, man, it didn't really work, but I like that one part of it. And you're like, no, I'll make it better for you. I start to do it for them. I'm like, I'll make it better. I'll make it better. I'll make it better. And then eventually you start to get like, they're like, well, when can I buy this? I'm like, well, now I've got to make it so they can buy it. And then eventually, once you've locked in the Kickstarter date, now you promised a lot of people a lot of things. So you kind of go from this internal motivation where I know what this can go to this external, like, I'm trying to make this better for other people, either the people I disappointed with a bad prototype or whatever. But like, it's almost got this emotional like thing where it drives you to complete things. But a lot of my games have crystallized really quickly, and others were a long struggle, and they still came out. But I don't know. I've just heard this thing where like a lot of times, like, don't be afraid of like low-hanging fruit. That a lot of times, like, keep a couple of games going, because there might just be one around the corner that just falls together really quickly and you can run with it. And then the other one, they're like, this is going to work. And you just keep hammering at it. So I don't know. It's just the roller coaster of design.
Yeah. So there was a thing you said when you were talking earlier about the game development and carrying aspects of Slay Aspire in, like that assignment of tokens and how they would have different meaning. One of the things I wanted to chat with you about was that idea of, because I think it's quite popular at the moment, the development of like AI systems and the kind of solo play mechanics, and because there's one element to that in board games. They're trying to incorporate solo systems, but you've been doing it, I'm assuming, with the digital games, because you have to have the AI playing against the players. What's your experience in developing the two? Like, there's
been a lot of cases, like Burgle Bros original, like it was going to have an app controlling the guard, and then we figured out the waypoint system, and we're like, oh, this is it. And like, it's one of those ones where almost letting yourself think about it in both domains, and then oftentimes you can just kind of like turn a corner and you're like, oh, okay, cool, we can take the digital part out and we're good. Not that one is better than the other, but developing, I mean, I'm very aware of like bookkeeping. Like that's a cost, and anything in a game like has to like pay for itself when it comes to bookkeeping. And the way, I mean, my games all kind of come in at the same complexity level, and so I do kind of have a gut feeling for kind of like how complex something should be and how much we should pare back. But during the design, you're going to grow and you're going to prune back. But a lot of it is like, making an AI. I'm trying to think of like a good example. I've done it for like paperback and paperback and hardback. We made AIs for, and we failed. We actually put a lot of effort into making an AI for Fugitive, and it doesn't work. I mean, an AI for the Marshal works, deduction, but an AI that can bluff is like some next level. Like, I mean, unless I get somebody to write me a neural net learning, whatever. So with hardback and paperback, it was a little easier because it was more like, here's some broad logic for when to buy what, and usually when do you pivot from one to the other. We've also used computers a lot to simulate when we were working on a Walkstar and some other canceled games, where we'll do a Monte Carlo, where we're like, okay, run this little game system 10,000 times. And sometimes we have to put a little bit of decision logic in that and just kind of see what the variance is, like what's the spread. So you can use tools, you can use computers that way. But like designing AI, I mean, I'm very wary of it. I mean, what's great about like Slay the Spire is like the intent system, which is also in like Into the Breach. Like intent systems are very big right now because they give you this bar, like this is what's happening this round. How are you going to deal with it? And so it forces the player to be more flexible. Where and Gloomhaven, like the logic is pretty simple, but because your own deck is exhausting itself, you have to make different decisions, and you have to pick the right time to use what card. So sometimes just holding a bar and understanding like you've got to jump over this. It doesn't have to be super dynamic. It doesn't have to be, because it's like giving the players different consequences and different ways to have to or different ways to solve the problem. I don't, especially when they know because the difference between video games and board games is transparency. It's called black box, right? It's like when I play a video game, there's a black box of logic, and I'm doing these inputs, and I'm trying to like make a mental model of like what the game is thinking inside of it. Whereas a board game is super transparent. It's like, here are all the rules, right?
Yeah.
Now, they surprise you in different ways. A video game will surprise you because it's like, oh, this is and you're when you get a valid model and or it does something that's logical. Whereas a board game, it's all there. Like there's no surprise in what the rules are. The surprise is in the emergence, and that's what's amazing about board games. They're like, oh, this, like Magic is all about this. Like this card and this card, when they come together, it does this, and or just situational, like when this was in this situation, which is very systemic, and it lets you be delighted on a kind of a really different level than video games. Because you're expecting a certain type of surprise with a video game, and if it does something outside of the norm, then it's just like messing with your model. It doesn't seem fair. It seems arbitrary. But like a board game, getting players to a spot they didn't think they would be in, with nothing hidden, with no like legacy surprise or whatever. Like these were the rules all along, but guess where you're at now. And as a designer, you get to like, yes, now I'm pushing you. Now I'm surprising you on whatever. So I love both. It's just I try not to. I mean, I like flow charts. I mean, I've seen some of these different solo systems, but I don't have a grand theory for it per se. Mostly, it's really broad stuff like when to buy victory cards versus economy cards, like, and what's the threshold for that. So, sorry, that's my rant.
That's all right. Ken has a request. Can you please do excellent in a Mr. Burns fashion?
No, the best is when he does the bald wax. Like,
that never happens. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, as a designer, Jeff Krause, who I've been collaborating a lot with, he comes from a video game background, and he's just funny because he always is like the sadistic designer. Where he wants the player to really pinch the player, like you're not going to get an easy choice, or you're going to have to sacrifice something. And he's my shoulder angel that's just like, no, you need to feast on their tears a little bit, to use the Eric Lang, and I mean, and that's the thing, like, I mean, roguelikes have really taught people to be okay with like, failure, and like it's going to be, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where we even did this in Turning, the game that we worked with, like certain games that they're just kind of like always giving you free stuff all the time. You need to have this cadence where there's kind of like these boring moments, and then there's these amazing moments, and the boring moments were an important part of those exciting ones, as long as there's not too much fatigue from them.
Yeah.
But
we do have a question as well from chat. Did anything come from your Pinball Tower Defense game?
Oh, okay. So so Peg Leg, we spent a bunch of time again in 2020 working on it. And it got to a good point. I mean, it's Peggle meets Plants vs. Zombies. And then like later on it became like a tower defense where it has like a line and you're shooting. I wish I had a video I could like show you. I have some builds if anybody wants to try it. But like I how you get these kind of like as a designer, they say you're always writing the same book, right? I have 3 different like video game and board game mechanics that fall into this like perfect prediction problem. And so I've discovered something about myself. I got a board game called Flowchart. I've got this game, and then turning are all kind of in this boat of where like, okay, your brain can see what's going to happen. Like you can look, the look ahead is very clear for you. The problem is like now I have to find the right shot. So what we did is it's a pinball game, but you can predict. You get 4 bounces for free or whatever, and like you can see exactly where it's going to go. And so you're like lining up, and we even like nudging thing. You're like, okay, I want to hit this power up, so the ball now explodes when it hits enemies, and then I want to hit this enemy, and you're getting a whole chain down. And when you first see that, you're like, man, this is amazing, this is powerful. And then there's just the fatigue, because like what'll happen is like eventually you've got to take a shot, because and you're like, no, is this one? And it like it's like AP in a video game. And I couldn't solve it. Like I parked the game, because I haven't figured out how to really solve this. I mean, I could put a timer on it, because any shot you make, you either are, finally got to the perfect shot, or you just got tired and you're like, I'll take this one. This is good enough. And you don't feel good about it, because you're like, I guess I just did. And so I had this game called Flowchart, where you're building a state machine and they're building a state machine, and it's like a Street Fighter thing, and like it breaks your brain, because like at first you're like, man, this is so cool, and then like you're like, okay, if I do this card and then I do this card, and like eventually you just get, I'll just do this, and then you feel bad, because it's a little more transparent than say like chess, where every move is gonna, like, you can see several moves ahead, and so it's on you to do that. And so it's one of these design things that I've been realizing about myself, and I don't feel like I've cracked it yet. Like I've come at the problem from a couple of different angles, but it's this double-edged sword where I get people really hooked for the first play, but then they just don't stick around. Like I sent them out to the same play test, and they're like, I'm kind of done with it. I'm like, oh, something's wrong here.
I think it sounds like the kind of game, excuse me, I need to look at, because I'm the one who would like my brain. I keep saying my brain doesn't work like that, but it aspires to it. So it's trying to find that kind of what's the middle ground where you find the fun to keep kind of engaging with it.
I mean, and there's nice things like there's a whole information horizon that's really useful. And like Burgle does this, where like, do you want to move or do you want to peek into that room? And you're like, sometimes the right answer is to peek, sometimes the right answer is to move. And you can kind of run the numbers, but in the end, it's kind of like, go with your gut. And that allows the alpha gamer to kind of not be right. Like the alpha gamer didn't know. And so it lets the individual be like, well, I'm going to make a choice, and it's kind of on me, but there's not a better one that somebody else could like solve for you. So kind of information horizon can help as a mitigation for alpha gamer, like keeping it not solvable. Now boarding as well. Like now boarding, you don't get to see all of the variables until the timer starts. So,
one of the things I find like interesting because I've been playing a lot of solo stuff, I've been kind of going back over games and kind of playing through them. And I think one of the big challenges with solo games is that on the one hand, people want a level of kind of depth and complexity and engagement in it, but that requires a level of rules, which makes it quite easy to get the rules wrong along the way. And I was kind of having this recently with Street Masters, where you're playing the game and you're like, I won, but did I? Because I think I might have got a rule wrong, like somewhere along the way. That kind of gave me an advantage.
Yeah, we found like in games that a lot of people are forgetting negative penalties. It's like if you forget a bonus, like if you forgot something in your tableau that gives you a bonus, that's on you. Like that's fine. But like when you forgot to give yourself a penalty for something, and so we'll often invert systems to be like, okay, it's a bonus, not a penalty or something. So because it was just so often to be like, oh well, because I do co-ops and stuff too, where it's like, oh, we forgot that we couldn't do this turn, and it's not a great feeling. So that's the thing about the other thing with AI systems is like trying to get all their bookkeeping at like one time and having it all in one place. So you can't like forget like, oh, there's this card over there that gives them -1 damage when I'm doing my roll on my turn. So you try to get everything about them in one place, and when they're running, they do it all at once and try to get all the information just so it's like easy or hard to miss. So elements like that.
something we did with Prisoner Arena with the Mocon characters, because they essentially offer kind of buffs within the arena. We made a point of them only triggering when they activate, so that so all your attention was on that character. Like, what are they going to do? Where are they going to move? And am I going to use their ability? Rather than, oh, if you're within 2 spaces of this, Farg, when you do this, you get a bonus, or it negates it, because it was just like, it was too easy to forget. And for a kind of a game that had to be family friendly as well, that was just too far, and it just works so much better that all your attention is on this character, and that's the time when you think about that stuff.
Yeah. Like, passive auras are for video games, just like it's just like the same thing, like tower defense. Like, everyone's like, oh, tower defense would make a great board game, and Kingdom Rush is good. The new Kingdom Rush is really solid. But like, it's been like something that people have been chasing forever, and you don't understand, like, this is a related rates problem of like, how fast does this guy move? How many hit points does he have? How much, what's the output of this cannon? What's the range of that cannon? And like, you have all these variables, and people are like, oh, I'll try to make, and then like, as a designer, you try it once, you're like, oh, nope, that's not gonna work.
Yeah. But do you think, like, I think at the moment, and this is total, I knew our conversation would veer off into different territories, so I'm partly really happy. Like, I think a lot of games being made at the moment are people who are coming into the design space are coming from a video game space and enjoying it, and they're trying to recreate stuff from a video game without really going like, what does a board game do really well? Like, what does a physical tactile game? And I find all the games that have loaded bookkeeping, you're like, oh yeah, you're trying to create that video game in a board game experience without being like cold enough to say, okay, I need to cut that bit out and that bit out, and this is the heart of that game experience that I want to keep in this game.
Yeah. I mean, you look at something like Dark Souls, like whether you look at Dark Souls the board game or you look at Dark Souls the card game. In my eyes, Dark Souls is one of my favorite series of games. Like, the whole Soulsborne series is, great because it's a game about mastery. It's a game that is very sort of like tricky from the very beginning. Like, whatever one you play, there's always going to be, the difficulty spike hits you, and it hits you hard, and it hits you early. You go into a boss fight 5 minutes in, and all of a sudden, oh crap, how am I going to do this? And what the board games what the board game and the card game have failed to do is give you the feeling that you get from the video game. You don't have the mastery. They've managed to do like the idea of the repetition and the dance of the fights and stuff like that. But you never feel like you have, like, I have done bad, I've done bad, I've done bad, and all of a sudden it clicks, and now I have done good. It's weird, and that's sort of
it's a skill mastery. Like, there isn't, you're not actually developing skill in a lot of those games. But then say the Spire actually pulls off that really well, where like these ascensions push you in ways where you're like, oh man, I can be better at this, and I can, there's a whole different kind of levels of like short-term, long-term thinking you have to do in that game. That's fascinating. And it's a very, very card game type thing. But the types of decisions, I feel like, are skill expressive. Like, when you see these guys that can do, a string of A20 runs, and you're like, are they drawing the same cards as me? Are they hitting harder somehow? Like, because the numbers are the same, but somehow. So I think using board game systems, you can still have a lot of skill expression. It's just that like, I don't know the Souls games, but from what it sounds like, there's a lot of output die rolls, and it's just like, well, you don't have control over that. That's not. It is the grind without getting any better, and so you just hoping to get lucky, and like that doesn't feel good.
They announced it last week, I think it was, maybe the week before, but there is a Slay the Spire board game coming out. Nobody has seen anything about it yet.
Yes, I was kind of sad because I'm like, well, I'm working on this thing, but mine's a word game. It's fine. But I've approached this exact thing because we're like, okay, what elements can come from Slay and work really well, and which ones do you like out of hand. I'm just like, nope. And like I said, the buff system was a big part of that. But like the intent and stuff, the intent system's really easy because you're just like, here's a cycle of attacks you're going to go into. And we have these double-sided cards. Like, these are your 3 attacks, and then when you take so much damage, you flip, and then your attacks are a little bit different on the back. It also keeps the bookkeeping low, so it's like 10 hit points on this side, count up to 10, flip it over, now you got to count 10. You don't have to count to 20. Like, that's the thing, is like trying to keep your number counting in board games under 20 is good. Or if you do large numbers, make sure it's on a track that you can add up a little bit over time. Like, you have to just think about like the literal bookkeeping in that case, where it's like just adding up numbers.
I mean, what do you think about the idea that they're making it a multiplayer as well? Which I ain't sure, baby. It's like perfect solo game, and it's like,
yeah, like just I don't know. I mean, it depends on, again, there's a lot of facets to it, and people can just be like, I think this is the facet, but like, I don't know. I mean, who knows what that will look. It's fun to speculate. Like, if I was going to design that, what would I do? But like for multiplayer, it'll probably be something where you've got every monster is scalable. So he's there. Like, the intent is for everyone. So everyone kind of has to deal with the monster incoming monster attack, and then you inflate its hit points so that you can all hit it, I guess.
This was a question for me around a game like that. You know, comes down to the why. I get there's the commercial aspect. There's a lot of fans of the game, but it's like, so because for me, like, setup and maintenance in the game is a big thing, and like breakdown afterwards, it's part of that, the mental load of playing the game. Whereas you can pick up your Switch or sit down on your computer and play a game quite easily. It's all set up for you. So if you're going to have to set up a game, right? So that's one score somewhat against playing the digital version. What is it you're going to add to the physical game? Like, it has to be doing something different from the digital game, but in a way that honors the original concept to make you want to play that version of the game, rather than it being like, oh, I'll buy it, play it once, and stick it on my shelf.
How do you justify the existence? Because like, if it is producing the same emotion for you, and it's just taking more time, then like, the why, I guess. So, yeah,
minis is the answer. There you go.
I mean, what was it? Binding of Isaac. You know, like, I'm trying to think of like, can we think of like a good, video game to board game translation? I don't have a ton on.
I actually like the Binding of Isaac. I think it's a fun game, but it doesn't do what the video game does. Hand of Fate didn't work well at all.
This is where we need the chat. I don't have.
Now Ken has to go off to work, who's sort of like our video game sort of specialist as well.
All the Polyomino, the Tetris games. There's something to really that's sure. Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, any like official Tetris games have generally been pretty awful. The ones that
but there's ones in that genre. Wasn't there a Kinesia one even? There was one literally like.
Yeah. But there's plenty out there.
I know. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. The designer of Shipwreck Arcana was saying he had designed essentially Into the Breach, and he, as a board game, like as a card game, he said it like, I've worked the whole thing out, and everyone was saying this is it wasn't called Into the Breach, but it was essentially Into the Breach, and he had pitched it to the company, and they already had plans for a board game, so they turned him down for it. But he was like, it's perfect as a board game because, and it's really interesting what you're saying, that it's broadcasting information to you, and it's about how you deal with that information. And it's like, I'm kind of going, because there's some stuff I've been thinking about going, actually, that's an interesting, I can see how that works in a board game setting. It's like, here's the new state, now you need to deal with it. And it's going to kind of, you have to keep reacting to what the AI is. It's almost leading, and you're responding to it.
I know we're forgetting like a ton of video game conversions, but nothing's really sticking out right now.
Starcraft. I mean, most of them don't do like the ones that spring to mind for me don't really do what the video games do. It's just, it's a different feeling type of game just set in that universe. Like you can't say that the World of Warcraft TCG does anything that playing standard World of Warcraft does.
If you, I got a couple designs that I want to talk about because I pitched 2 of them to Blizzard. I have an Overwatch one.
I was going to say if I could ask about that.
What?
I was going to say if I could ask about that.
Before you get into that, XCOM.
Yeah.
XCOM's pretty good. Yeah.
So I've never actually played the video game,
but the thing is, the video game, the app integration is really, really clever. But like, you're not actually doing the tactics. Like the core of it is a tactics game, and you weren't doing a tactics game.
Yes,
right?
And so you're not doing the squad level type.
Yeah,
stuff.
like what's my chance to hit? Shoot my, get the sniper in the back, and But I mean, it just needed a different theme. I think it was doing a lot of really good things, but
I suppose that's like. Really, though, is that what we should be expecting from a board game based on an IP? Is it's that it doesn't recreate the thing that it's been inspired by, but it's building out the world in a different way, in a way that kind of aligns itself to what board games or card games are good at doing.
Yeah. So the Warcraft game, I pitched for like a Warcraft 2, like for because that's what I played when I was a kid, and then later I adapted it to Tooth and Tail. I was working with the creator of Tooth and Tail, and in the end it didn't work out for various reasons because you gotta make the call. But that one was using the original one was using a deck. It was using a deck to build things. So like as you built something, you would put it in your discard pile, and then when it came into your hand, it was done with production. So using the deck building as a mechanism for like queuing things was pretty cool. And then when it came to your hand, you could put it onto the board. And now most of your hand was workers, so you could send somebody, you could put a card down and start moving it around face down. They didn't know if it was a worker or a unit that had come into your hand, and like that all worked pretty well. But I don't know. It's got some good pieces to it. And then the other one was this Overwatch game where I was using the good old cube tower from Shogun and Wallenstein. And what fascinates me about cube tower is it's a quasi-deterministic thing where it's like it's not a dice and it's not a deck. It's somewhere in between. And like you have these probabilities of things happen. So we had this little tactics zone tactics game where you're going around as Overwatch characters shooting each other. And you'd build up these cubes, and when you want to do a different one of your abilities, you dump those cubes in, and then it would say which ones are success, right? Whichever certain colors were success. But any other cubes that would come out would fill up your ult meter, and so you'd get this big ball of like 20 cubes when your ult was full. You dump it in the tower, and again, like it had some good pieces, and and they passed on it, and that was one of the ones where it's like. Some of these in both of those cases, it's like they were very much in genres that like I feel like this is a game for someone else. Like I have a really good mechanic for it, but I don't love that game enough to marry it. When you make a game as an independent publisher, you're going to be playing that game for the next 10 years, hopefully, and you have to still love it. After that many plays.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those ones where I don't even feel like I can take this to production because of the amount of testing, because I don't deep down love this game like that. It's kind of like I made something for someone else. And then maybe that's where I should have found a publisher. I should have worked with somebody else. And I guess I did in the sense I was going to Blizzard. But like that, making those choices now is more like I'll have a good idea and I won't get as far now because I'm just like, I have to make something that I feel like that I'm that passionate about. So.
That's where genuinely it's like talk to USAopoly, like talk to Tony there, because they're essentially in the business of marrying up.
Yeah, IPs
and some of the team at Hasbro are pretty good at that, where they'll just go, okay, yeah, we'll take that and we'll marry it to something and we'll make something.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be worried about sticking at it for that long, or else just find a different game like yourself that works with that. If it's the mechanic you enjoy, then
and there's plenty of pilfering where it's just like, oh, I've got this, like I've pulled back the good old non-transitive dice several times. We're like, ooh, look at this, they're non-transitive dice, they're so cool, and I've tried them twice and they didn't work.
So I have to admit ignorance. What's non-transitive dice?
It's a fun little Google rabbit hole to go down.
Okay.
You can have sets of dice that if I roll a die and you roll a die and we compare just higher numbers, I'm gonna win like 60% of the time. So it's like a paper, rock, scissors thing, right? So we did this. We translated the game and we started to make this tooth and tail game. We had all the different animals represented as these different dice, and we even would make some different custom dice. And so, but the thing is, I can beat, say dice A beats dice B 60% of the time.
Okay.
Dice B can beat dice C 60% of the time. But then you can get dice C to beat dice A 60% of the time. And if you look at the numbers, so you've got like 6, 6, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So it's like it's got two high numbers, and then you've got like other ones that are just like 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So like they're more like even numbers versus more spiky numbers. And like after a certain number of rolls, this one's going to win so much time, which is great in an RTS where you're like, this unit will beat this unit most of the time, but then you have some variance. So if you ever want to use non-transitive, they're super fun for getting these fun little ripples where it's just like but you have to have the dice have enough rolls that like you want to have enough that the average won't happen per se, but few, so that you don't have too many rolls or too few rolls in a given fight. But yeah, so we did that with Tooth and Tail, and it was really fun. And that's what we used Monte Carlo simulations and worked out what wins and what loses. But there's a set of 3 dice, there's a set of 5 dice, there's a set of 4 dice. You can make your own, but because the statistics aren't hard, it's not hard to do the probabilities on it. But it's just this really weird property where you have these dice that beat each other in a very, very basic way. It's like who has the higher number. And it's just kind of fascinating. And I haven't seen anybody actually pull it off in a game yet, but should be doable.
I mean, I've been doing board game design streams on my Twitch channel for the last like 3-4 months now. And it's always interesting hearing a new thing to, something new, inspiring thing to drive down. We did a game jam over the Christmas holidays where everybody was designing like a something and write, a roll and write, a flip and write, or whatever that had to be able to be played on stream, that sort of thing. So when we do IdleCon 2 in the summer, I think maybe basing it around something very different like that, like a non-transitive dice, would be really, really cool.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, let me know if you're. It'd be fun to participate, or I can give you some fodder for like, because it's just like things. It's like I mean, I'm at the point where when you're early as a designer, you are worried that like it's your last good idea you're ever going to have, and that's like the real fear of a designer is like, oh man, it's over. Somebody, if somebody steals this, I just got to pack it up and I can't make games anymore. But now I am relieved. I'm like, cool. I'm glad that got made. I don't feel responsible to make that anymore.
Yeah.
And so like that's why I'm passing it on. Like somebody make a non-transitive dice so I can not feel bad about my failure in attempting that.
Yeah. You didn't. Yeah. You can always exist in a possibility space of my game would have been awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't have to make it because it's been made, so I can't make my game now. But it would have been awesome.
It would have been great. Schrodinger's design.
And also, or you just realize that whatever you're going to make is going to be different. That's why like the whole Slay the Spire thing didn't really bug me. I was just like, I'm sure whatever I'm doing is going to be so different that it's fine. It's fine. Like it's going to be my take. It's going to be their take, and it's okay.
It's funny when people would come and be really anxious about presenting an idea to us about it being like stolen. They don't want to show us stuff.
NDA. Yeah.
I would just, and we do use NDA just to kind of go like more from that we are not stealing your idea perspective. But I always say to them, look, I have a list of ideas of things I want to develop. Your idea has to be awesome to knock any one of them off my list, because it's far more fun to develop my own stuff than to develop, someone else, to make someone else's game. as well.
I mean, hell, I've got 6 things on the go there, and those are the ones that are just on the go. The rest of them, like there's another 4 or 5 of them in notepad form. There's another couple of them in prototypes. It's just sort of like, dude, I ain't got the time to steal your idea.
Yeah,
I've got all these other things to do.
I mean, just so people know, I have to do a push for. So I do Tabletop Network, which is a conference for board game designers, and we're going to do it again at the end of this year. But we didn't do it in 2020. But I've been trying to support tabletop mentorship. Go to tabletopmentorship.org. They have the open. It's open right now. You have like 3 more days to sign up. It is a free mentorship. Either you can mentor or you can apprentice or a mentee, whatever. It is great. I've been helping them getting content for like doing workshops and doing talks and stuff to do alongside your efforts. But it's a 3-month program. It's free. You get to hang out with somebody cool in the industry and talk about. And it's not just there's tabletop RPGs. There's artwork. It's not just systems design, which we're talking about right now. But like I've really been trying to pay it forward because I'm happy to talk with new designers. And I've got a whole spiel that I give my new designers. But this has just the ability to reach a whole bunch of people. It's very and it's getting better every time. They're getting more people involved. They're getting more resources. They're doing micro grants. Like you can't afford to print out your game. They'll give you like $100 to print your game out. Like it's so good. Like it's just good in this in every way. And I want to really push for it. And they have a Patreon they're starting up, and they have and they're registering as a 501c so they can take donations. But they've just and they are like organized way better than even we were with Tabletop Network. Like they're just you can look at the report from last time, how many people are involved, and they're doing a lot of stuff to accommodate to. They're really trying to help underrepresented groups. So whatever.
So, no, I mean it's great to hear that. That's one thing where I always want to kind of contribute back, but just putting it out there has no kind of impact. So being part of a bigger organization that's coordinating that is a lot better. And I have to admit, like I have to deal with my own insecurities of like going so many other people so much more prolific than me.
Dude, I've done it twice. If I can do it, you can do it.
Fair enough.
Good Lord.
Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. But okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, and then they do. There's with the mentors, they have this problem with imposter syndrome where people are just like, am I good enough to be a mentor? It's like we're all faking it. None of us really know what's going on. We're just trying stuff.
Yeah,
apart from when the mentee goes back and goes, excuse me, can I transfer?
Can I get someone else? Can I get someone else who's less egg-shaped? That'd be great. Thanks. But I like to. I've done it twice, and it's really, it's fantastic being able to sort of like share what to share your knowledge with someone who is just coming up, and you get some fantastic, some fantastic ideas back from them. Because anytime you speak with somebody new, you're going to be bouncing off ideas in a different way, and that interaction is always very, very, very cool. Yeah, I should probably sign up for this one again, shouldn't I? Yeah,
you got like 3 days. Get on it. Like, and I don't know. I just get a lot out of it. Okay, here side thing. This is a fun mental exercise for designers. This is like I get these because I get people on Skype or I meet them in person, and we go to Starbucks or whatever, and they're talking about their game, and there's a motivational question that I like to ask. It's like, okay, suppose you could be done with your game. It's already successful by any metric, and you're like 3 years in the future, right? But you can only have all of the notoriety or all of the money. What would you take? And it's interesting because there is a line. There are people that are entrepreneurs. They want to make something successful. They're more like an MBA type. Like they want to they see an opportunity, and money is the metric of it being good because that's all the market, and then you have the artist is like, I want to share this with the world, and I want kind of that validation, but I also want to find my tribe. And so I don't talk down to either of them. Like neither is worse. Both are like, one is pride and one is greed. Like they're both 7 deadly sins, but it's okay. Like but it helps you understand why you're in the game. Like why are you making games? Why are you doing this? And it really can help you, understand what your secret victory condition is and what's driving you. And it makes it so that when it can make your success much clearer. You're like, I've made it. Okay. I can be happy. Versus like chasing forever and like, why am I never happy? It's like, well, you don't know what you want out of it. So very often like setting that, and then when you get there, you can be like, cool, and you can enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I would argue to some extent those are both moving goalposts because,
sure,
making that game or getting that notoriety is you're actually trying to address that other time when you wanted to be seen or to be heard and it never happened, and so you're chasing it now.
Yeah,
and you'll get there and it'll just move like another few feet back. And so the next game you make,
that's the whole like the Ira Glass talk on like taste versus talent. Like, your talent is up here, and then your taste is out here, and then your talent has to work its way up, and the disparity is what hurts when you make a game and you immediately your taste tells you that your game is bad, and so yes, as soon as you get to here, your taste gets even more refined, and it's an endless thing, but it's really part of our wiring. It's a seeking behavior, and we're getting more refined, but it gets stuff done, it gets stuff out, it gets us motivated.
Yeah, so
it's not all bad. But
cool. So I will be signing up for that then. I just wanted to ask you, I'm looking at my list.
I'm signing up for it right now, so just so it's getting it done.
So so there's kind of two things I want to touch on. The first one is, in what ways has the past year impacted your thinking about games?
I'm making a solo game now, so
there we go.
Yeah, I already was not able to get out as much. Earlier in my career, I was like hitting the street. I'm going to a game store, talking people into, I'm not a crazy person, just play my game, and really hitting the streets. And I've been doing that less, even before COVID. And now it's just like, and so I've been thinking more solo, but also I miss that loop of being in front of people, getting fresh eyes on a concept. Also, I'm a lot less afraid of online tools. Like online tabletop simulator is not bad. Like, it's not a bad way to play. Board Game Arena is pretty fun. And I don't miss conventions as much as I thought I would. I miss meeting people.
Yeah.
But there's so much stress with conventions because you're always trying to break even, and logistics, my first time at Essen, he who shall not be named screwed up my shipping, and I didn't have anything to sell. I have a very small amount of and so that night, a kind friend loaned me their rental car, and I drove 5 hours overnight to Leipzig, to the to our warehouse, packed their car full of product, and drove back with stuff to sell for the second day of Essen, and got no sleep. So you got to make lemonade sometime, but it was so stressful because sometimes your games didn't make it through customs, like your SOL, and so I'm just like, but I always feel like if I don't do conventions, people will forget who I am, or and then and I'm even doing little booths. I'm not even trying to overspend with these conventions. I'm really trying to break even.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. So I do not miss the stress of having a year off of conventions was okay. I was okay. But I miss meeting fans, because that's why I go, is to be like, people want to sign the box, I'll sign the box or whatever. But I really like to get ideas from them, or even after hours testing and whatnot. So mostly that's been rough. So
yeah, and we miss bumping into each other in Dublin.
Dublin Airport, the usual meeting place for the Fowers, Fox, O'Connor triumvirate.
So, but I don't know. We'll see how things evolve. It'll be interesting to see what really changes. What doesn't go back to normal afterward. Are handshakes going to go away? Is that we're not going to do handshakes anymore? Ever?
I think we're going to go straight to hugging. Get that hand out of there. like diving in.
I think there is going to be a rush on. I've had my COVID vaccination pin badges.
Yeah,
and there will be like a universally recognized symbol that when you see that, it's just like, yeah, okay, I think I can physically touch you or stand within 3 feet.
I can see it being a tattoo, man. Like, I mean, getting a tattoo that you've got a vaccination for it would, commemorate the year and all that.
Yeah, and every time it gets like refreshed, just like
yeah, and then you're going to have a load of Christians going about the mark of the beast, and it could be fun.
They got to put the microchip somewhere.
That's true. It's like, why, Agatha, do you think that Bill Gates wants to know about you going to Tesco? Nobody cares.
And that those 5G towers, man.
Yes. So I'm kind of curious, because like one of the things I've been hearing from distributors was the rise in interest in the last year in 2-player games. So they're really looking for 2-player games because, as you know, the Magic one would be a solo kind of 2-player game, but there's a lot of it is couples at home and 20-somethings who have that time to play, and they've noted that's where there's a huge jump in sales around those kinds of games.
Yeah. Fugitive has done really well. That's my 2-player. And we even made a free version, and we made a web version that you can play asynchronously with people online.
Okay.
And I realized that maybe the game, I mean, when you get to high level play, I'm like, maybe the game isn't balanced. Because it's like, there's this thing where like, as you get better at the game, one side starts to win more and more and more and more. And what I need to put in the rule book is like, well, you can just, there's a knob, you can just give the fugitive more starting cards. Like you can just keep turning that until it's balanced for you. But people want it to be like perfect out of the box. I'm like, I had no idea people would get this good at this game.
Yeah.
So I need your help. So.
Yeah, it's that patch, being able to release patches. I mean, it's funny actually. We've been doing it quite a bit recently with our games, where we've gone back and looked at things that reviewers or players have been saying weren't quite right, and we've kind of experimented with, well, what would we do with that without changing the components in the game?
Yeah.
And it's been an interesting kind of experiment because
I mean, you can do the Serlin model where you just make a whole new version and make all the other versions now invalid.
Shh. Let's not talk about Yomi. Shush.
Third edition, you got it right.
Yeah, I think I have the first one.
Hey, it's still a fun game, regardless.
The games are great. The problem is like, I mean, sell stickers or something. I don't know. Like, I don't know how to, because he really wants the balance there. But like, making your whole copy just worthless is like not a good feeling.
No, but I think that's the thing where you're so intent on pursuing your idea of perfection. Like, and I think this is one of the things I have issues with. You're not thinking about the player or the person who's invested in your game. Because it's almost like, well, forget about them. I need to make this.
Yeah, I mean, he is. I mean, as a person, he is seeking truth in systems. He's trying to go. He's really on a mission for that. And so, like, if you understand what he's going for, you can invest in that. Mm-hmm. So,
this is just a kind of a side thing that ties back to previous conversations. In the world of Myth, which is a game I kind of backed on Kickstarter years ago and really enjoy as a kind of dungeon crawler game, it's interesting in the kind of groups and the forums at the moment. There's all of this, like, so much work going into expanding the world of Myth, like making it more customizable, bringing in kind of campaign and legacy elements. And it's really funny because I feel like I'm the guy in the corner going, I just want to make it really fast to set up, and I can start playing it without having to organize the box first before I, like, my perfect dungeon crawler is like, I lift the lid off the box and I'm playing it from that moment. Like, there's just something about every step I'm doing is adding to that gameplay experience.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's where, like, you get your different gamer types, where it's just like, this person wants narrative, this person wants immersion, and they're willing to pay these other prices for it. The Quantic Foundry stuff is really fascinating for like identifying that. But like that's the thing, is like more isn't always better when it comes to just immersion, where it's like the Firefly game didn't have like 1 million expansions. It was this big sprawling thing, and it kind of just gets overwrought because they just want to like give you more, and they want to give you more and more and more of that world. But there's just this threshold where it's just like either the box is too cumbersome or what. I mean, a lot of games are just doing this, where there's just so much content. I mean, The Descent. I mean, a lot of Fantasy Flight games just get, you know, they just keep giving and giving and giving. Understand, and people assuming to be complete, you know, they have to keep consuming. Like, I don't have the whole game, you know. And then it ties into the tyranny of Kickstarter exclusives, where it's just like, you know, if you don't have this one piece, your game isn't as complete as this game because it has one more promo card, and you got to live with that every night, you know. And it's just like not really fair to the player.
I'm just gonna, like, that face you're pulling there, Tim. I'm just gonna picture that leaning over me in bed.
Your game isn't complete
because that's the angle of your camera at the moment. It makes it seem like you're looking down on me.
The dramatic lighting.
Rory, what have you missed? No,
you'll never get it. And that's the thing, is I think like a lot of times in my, like with Paperback, it was more just like kind of kitchen sinky, where I'm just like, I'm gonna just stuff value in this box, and then I'm not gonna add to it. Like, I did eventually do a Paperback expansion, but like I try to like put every idea that I thought of in that one. I felt like it was a little more modular, where people can kind of pick. Again, like I'm relying on the player to kind of choose how they want to play the game. But like I try to really stuff value up front, because it's like I do not want to come back to that game unless I have a lot new to bring. It's like I won't do and so that's why like hardback, like I brought so much new that it was a new game. Like Burgle 2, it's like it's like, you know, all new tiles, all new events and gear, and like everything is new, because it's like I don't know, I feel bad kind of just doing like, here is a little bit of an add-on that doesn't really change the experience, but now you get to feel bad because you don't have a complete game, or I don't know, like I did it with Paperback, and I'm not a big fan of just that little of mid to small expansions, and I just think you have to be fair to players, just like there's abusive ways to design video games, you know. The same thing with board games. It's like using a little bit isn't bad. Like, I mean, Kickstarter is good at doing the time scarcity. Going back to the QVC, you know, like what are the ones that are fair to the player, and which ones are psychological arbitrage, where it's just like, I can, you know, Skinner boxes are going to work forever. Like there's certain psychological tricks that people will always fall for. And as a designer, the gutter is casino games. And so you have to decide where your threshold is as a designer. How am I, you know, and I've had different crises in video game and board game design, where I'm like, is this ethical? And like I tore a game apart for reasons that now I don't think were that bad. But like there are things like that, and you can't be super abusive in board games, just because it costs money and there's transit and whatnot, and you can't get as vicious as a casino game. But like, I think respecting the player and their time is you kind of have to have your line, and so that's my high horse.
Well, on a completely side note, when you were saying casino games, it reminded me of a game that was on Kickstarter, which I completely missed, but I did get to play it at Cannes when they were kind of demoing it back in February, called Paperback. VABANQ UE, I think. Yeah, I guess it's French. It's so much fun. It's like a casino game. But just the bluffing involved in it is so good. It's so good. And like, I'm not, when I see a gambling game, I'm like, yeah, really, would I be into this? But the bluffing involved is so good, and the system works. Yeah, like, and really, I don't think that the bluffing, I mean, because the whole social deduction empire is built on, you know, lying to each other, and I think that's pretty benign in the sense that like, it's not
being abusive to your wallet. It's almost just like a slot machine versus like poker. Actually, casinos kind of have a hard time making money off of, but it's one of the richer experiences. Whereas just like the slot machine is just kind of like this, random reward schedule stuff.
And this for me, it's one of those games that gives you the kind of like the fun and the thrill of like being at the casino, because you're kind of like moving your chips out, but you're not spending any money. Like that's what I really like about the game.
Yeah.
It's takes all the fun bits without the yeah.
So, but yeah, like and that's the thing is like we've Push Your Luck is part of. I mean, we take parts into the board game world from casino games. But I don't know, and it's a mix of things. So I'm saying like Kickstarter exclusives and stuff like that, I feel kind of bad about, because I feel like it's kind of over that line of like, you need to get this thing, and then within a game there also can be things where, I mean, just I guess like Dark Souls, it's like you just got to roll until you get lucky, and I don't know. So yeah, maybe it's not the same, but I'm just amusing.
I always say, actually, one of the types of game, digital game experiences I always reference, particularly like with Rory Story Cubes, and we've done it with other game syncs, and it's left my mind which one. The moment in oh my god, Angry Birds. Yeah, my brain has just stopped. So in Angry Birds, that moment when you pull back the kind of catapult and let go. So that moment between taking your action and it being resolved, is this kind of wonderful moment. And like I kind of realized when I was watching people playing Story Cubes, there was that moment when they were shaking the dice before they let go. It's this kind of realm of possibility, and that's one thing I try to look for in games, is like games that stretch that out for players, because it's not really the outcome that matters. It's that kind of moment in the middle. And I read somewhere like that's where you get the dopamine hit.
Yes. So there, I've got a talk that I gave at Tabletop, and I've been developing it. I gave it at Blizzard on anticipation, and literally that moment of like is like, yes, there's a lot of different things. There's like the near miss, like so if you get really close to something, almost all the same brain centers fire. And so that's because your brain is saying, good job, you're almost there. And what's funny is you're almost as happy when you get a near miss. But there's this moment of resolution where the outcome, and especially when it's a big divergence where like this means I lose or I win, and it's down to this last roll. And so now the stakes are super high about these. You see these two futures colliding, and the delta between those futures is the tension. Board games that do this well is actually Ticket to Ride, where it's like, I'm trying to build this path and I'm hoping I get enough cards to build that thing, and who else wants to get that thing? And like you're suspended in that Angry Birds arc for most of the game, because you're not sure how it's going to resolve and what pieces you're going to be able to get, if you're going to be able to build this whole route, because there's tension with every piece you're trying to build out. So having, or in a worker placement, like in Agricola, like, oh man, I hope it comes back to me before somebody gets that wood, and there's a lot of like suspension of resolution that can amp that up. But anticipation is freaking everywhere, from like freaking EDM, like when is the bass going to drop? Like, I mean, we're constantly in this, this state of anticipation, and there's so many flavors of it that I've been trying to like dig into it more and get a few more terms for it, and kind of get a shape of it. I should probably pitch it again I'm trying to give it at GDC. But it's a kind of a thing I've been thinking about and putting more pieces together for. I've got some, I went to Project Horseshoe. It's a video game designer conference, and we did a white paper on anticipation. So yes, that is it. Like that moment of all the possible futures, and there's this kind of immediate denouement that comes off of that too, of like how you see the outcome and have this immediate response to it. Sorry, that's psychology.
No, that's. If we didn't have at least one conversation like that with you, I was like, we're not doing our job.
Yeah.
So we're kind of getting to the end. Well, we're past it, and I'm going one more thing, literally. Like so I noticed you've set up like a Patreon, and I'm kind of curious. There's a couple of people I follow on Patreon, and I'm curious, like, what kind of motivated you to do it, and also, I guess, what's surprised you about being, using Patreon.
I've enjoyed it. I mostly am trying to get a collection of kind of like people that get to see the really early stuff. And so most of my stuff is through a Discord channel. So I say, hey, when you sign up, come over to the Discord channel. And then as that, like my very first thing where I'm like, okay, this isn't totally embarrassing. I post, a link to a video game build or, and then, and I try to get them just early stuff. So that's kind of what I've used it for. So I haven't posted a lot of videos on there or whatever, but mostly it's just like I want to have a little club of people that kind of get the first eyes on things. So I don't know. I mean, it hasn't really grown, but I like the people that are there. And so I want to keep doing it. I send little postcards out to them as well. It's just kind of fun to have, and then, like I said, I got some early Burgles and I sent it to them, but we'll see. I don't know what it would change into or evolve into, but like for me, it's kind of my home team, my testing group. But I mean, have you guys done one?
No, it's something I've it's the reason I ask is also I always think of Chris Anderson, like, did an article years ago in Wired about the kind of 1,000 fans principle of, if you want to be kind of live and do creative work, you find your 1,000 fans or what that number is who will buy whatever it is you produce, so that you can kind of keep doing it.
I very much for me, that was literally the success when I had my first Kickstarter for Paperback and I got just over 1,000 backers. Like that was it. I'm like, this might work. And for me, that is like, I bought into that, like where, and so mine is more like the way I do my website and stuff. And I don't really advertise or anything. It's more just like word of mouth, is that I want it to be what if you get told about it, this is where you come. And then you're on the inside now, like, the secret menu in and out or whatever, like you're in the know. And I also try to put my face up there and try to be like, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And I've really enjoyed that. I feel like I get a connection with with people that way. And I want to get letters back from people. I mean, I'm sure you guys get this too with the kind of games you guys make.
So this was kind of the thing I was going to add. It's like, I think, and Michael, you'd agree, we have a very dispersed fan base. So we'll kind of bump into people and I'll be, oh yeah, I love your stuff. But like, kind of right now in the middle of COVID, we're really struggling with connecting with that dispersed group. And we really struggled with Prism Arena as a Kickstarter because we didn't have that immediate list of people who were like, yeah, we're on it. And it's kind of partly been my, as the business owner, that's what I've been trying to look at this year, is like, how do we actually consolidate that 1,000 fans together so we can actually focus more on developing new stuff, because we're really having to focus on the selling of what we have already.
Sure. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, you guys have tons of personality, and doing stuff like this is great. It's like, I think a patron would be good, but trying to figure out a place where you can have your tribe, and I think giving them opportunities to have a fireside chat, or to just get involved with the process. I mean, it depends. I mean, some people are more transactional, where they're just like, let me know when it's done. So they don't necessarily want to know how the sausage is made. They just want good sausage. So figuring out ways to engage them with what they're comfortable with, because I assume everyone would want to be involved in the process. So even when I'm talking to a fan, I'm like, would you have any ideas for an expansion? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, and because I just assume I'm projecting like how I would want to be involved. And if I was, like, a lot of this mentorship stuff too is like, I'm doing the things that I wish people did for me.
Yeah.
When I was getting started in the industry, I wanted a mentor. I wanted someone to give me the time of day. And I go to GDC and like no one would talk to me. And so I'm just kind of like projecting a bit. So like figuring out a way where they can. I mean, I think Stegmeyer does a really good job. And he's got that little like program where people can kind of like get things early and whatnot. So people that are more like, I want to support you in your games, but they don't necessarily want to get into design. So I almost have like a group that's just like, this is the frequent Costco card buying people that are like, they can get the games sooner and cheaper and some exclusive stuff. And then a group that's like, you want to like get into the lab and do some science experiments with us. We'd love to have you there. And I think those are different people.
Yeah. It's interesting the way you've got the tiers on it.
So
the way that works. Cool. Yeah. But I think that's one thing I found really interesting over the last year is that idea of opening the door a little bit more to that behind the scenes process. Because I've worked with people in the past and they're kind of like, no, you can't be like very business oriented, and we're like, you can't be showing that stuff off. And I'm like, well, like, why not? Like, what's the problem?
Okay, here's the one trick though, is, I mean, I've got a whole rant about ego and how to manage ego and different things like that. But like, you have to watch it, because when you're making something, the drive to give people a peek can sabotage you, in the sense that part of your excitement to show it to people is you're driving to get it done. But if you're just like, I'm just going to show people a little bit right now, you're actually satisfying part of your ego, where you're like, they get to see it and they're like, oh, that's so cool, I'm so excited, and then you get to feel good and whatnot. But now you've lost a little bit of that drive to see it through. So but at the same time, like, I feel from a business perspective, letting people behind the curtain is really good. So I try to get this balance where I'm like, okay, I think this is pretty presentable, and I literally need feedback at this point. And then it can kind of open it up.
So you kind of like,
does that make sense?
No, yeah. So it's like, you need to have someone else do the showing. And they go, yeah, Rory, Michael, no, we haven't shown it to anyone. No, there's no feedback. Just keep working away on the game.
Yeah. You've got this anonymous third party who's giving you feedback through the people.
It's funny because like one of my things I've learned to my personality is, I will kind of throw stuff out there, and it's kind of to see what sticks that people react to. And then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that one, because it could be a lot of things, and it kind of helps with the decision making process. But also I do just throw stuff out, and I've had to rein that in, because people think, if I'm going, oh, it's just an idea, people are going, oh, when are you going to make that? And you're like, oh no, it's just an idea. So there is that element of, crap, I got to go ahead and make that game. So I kind of try to use that, tactically, to kind of go, I actually need to kick up the arse to do this. So I'm going to kind of throw it out so that someone will go, when you're doing it, and then that part of my brain will be like, oh, Rory, you have to go and do that now as well. So it's like an intentional setting myself up for it.
Yeah. And people get anchored too, like, especially if you've gone back to the same group with the same game and you've done these radical changes. They're like, the previous one was better, and you're like, no, it wasn't. Like, it was clearly inferior. This is a better version. But you're like, that's good. That's interesting feedback, and I'm going to go test it with somebody else.
You're not in my group anymore. Get out.
Well, that's what I've got people that get really attached to early versions of my game, and like, no matter what it is, like, the later versions are never as good as that early one. I'm like,
well, you get to say that's the benefit of you being a Patreon. You get to have that earlier version of the game. But I'm going to keep going this way.
All right.
Anything else? I think we're going to wrap up there.
All right.
So, Tim, thank you, of course, for spending time with us and, coming on the show and everything. I'm just going to bring up the sites and everything like that, so people will be able to go and do things.
Is most of it.
Yeah, you've got such a clean website name. It's great.
Fowers.games. That's it. And of course, you can also go to just at Tim Fowers on Twitter as well. That's the place to be.
T Fowers.
At T Fowers, yeah. Hang on, I'll just put it in there as well. Create a banner.
Yeah, you can at me. I mean, I'm happy to chat with people on Twitter. And I don't know. Those are my main channels. My phone number is on the website if you want to call me.
Don't say
I do
that.
I do all my
rude question.
I do all my own customer support. It's really funny because like some people still don't like, even though they've ordered, they still don't know who I am.
Yeah.
But other people, like, I don't like say it's me. I just kind of like do little hints, and then eventually it like clicks, and they're like, "Wait, what?" And they get, when a super fan, But it's one of those things where like I mean, it's the whole type of business I want to be in, where it's like I'm taking care of you, and like I'm the person behind it, and whatnot. I don't do all the emails, but I do. But when it's urgent, and usually when they're calling, it's because something's really bad. So I should probably be taking it anyway.
Cool. Well, don't forget, me and him will be back, of course, on Friday. We have not yet decided what we're going to do, Rory. So
no, we will talk tomorrow.
Decisions must be made.
Yeah.
You can find us, of course. I'm at Adel Michael. He's at Rory O'Connor. We are at Hub Games. And
next week, we're going to be joined by Jen Ellis from Together Games.
Together Studios.
Publishers of Illimat and I was going to say Adventure Mart, the Adventure Zone as well. And they have a third game, which the name eludes me at the moment. It's coming out this year, I think. Yeah.
We'll do some digging for next week. It's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, Jen's incredible woman working within the games industry. We kind of lean on each other and like cry about the business side of stuff. So we're just going to do that on air next week. Yay!
All right, so prepare yourself for next Wednesday for an hour and a half of crying, which will be an absolute delight for everybody involved and won't be uncomfortable at all.
Not at all.
It's more
yeah, it'll be fine. It's fine. Tim, anything else you want to say? Any beef you want to squash?
No, I'm good. Yeah. I mean, I probably in the spring I'll have a Kickstarter for this paperback thing, so keep an eye out.
We will do indeed. Cracking. All right, well, thank you very much for joining us. We will catch you soon, and this is where we wave. Bye bye. See y'all later.
Bye.